Remarkable people overcoming remarkable challenges with resilience, dedication, community, and grit. Listen as they share their stories of overcoming adversity. Open your eyes to what is genuinely possible for all of us. Authentic Adversity with host Chris Howe.
Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please like, comment, and share. Today, I sit down with one of my new favorite friends. This is a guy that I saw on Instagram, and I couldn't get enough of his content. He's just an amazing guy with an amazing story, super funny, very real, and that's what I love about him. He's a recovery coach and the creator of the Life Beyond Sobriety community. This is Kelly France.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate you having me on. It's so great to meet you face to face here.
Yeah, definitely. We had a good chat the other day, and we're actually going to be doing some work together. So it's something that I'm really, really looking forward to. And your mission and the community that you're involved in and that you've created is such an important one. And so I definitely want to talk about that. But before we get into that, I'd love to kind of give the viewers and listeners an idea of your story. So we know you're in recovery today, but sort of like, how did we get there? How did we grow up? I kind of like to do this in a chronological order. So just, maybe start with where you're from, how you grew up, and what it was like for you.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to. So I will say, well, I'll start at the end that I'm 50 years old as of today. So when we go through my story, you'll know that's what it's leading up to, me being a 50-year-old recovery coach.
Yeah.
So I live in downtown Toronto now, here in Canada, and I grew up not too far from here, just a little bit north of here, and I have I would call my family as maybe not normal, because who's normal, but yeah. I got a mom and dad and a sister, and they're fantastic. We had I'd say upper middle class upbringing. Mm-hmm. And we had some daily drinking in the house with my dad for, I guess, the first maybe 25 years or so. No, not even 20 years of my life. Okay. He was quite the heavy drinker. Mm-hmm. And he's not like me. He stopped when he had to stop at a certain point. He stopped.
Yeah. One of those weird people that we don't understand.
That's what I'm thinking, and I look back at it and I said, I don't know if he's just super, super stubborn, but
could be.
Whatever. He did it though. And I give him full credit for that. And that's just so cool. And he was an amazing father to me during that and after that. So there's nothing that I've built up that I haven't spoken to him about. And he's actually passed on a few years ago, which we can talk about in a couple of minutes. But, just so there was some drinking, quite heavy drinking when I grew up. So I did see that. And when I was 14, I found alcohol. Personally, that was my first love. Actually, for me, it went food and then alcohol. I started coping with food when I was really young. I was quite overweight when I was a kid. And it just gave me something that I needed. I don't know. Yeah. I can't explain why, but I just needed to be satiated somehow. And food did that to me when I was a young kid. Yeah. And, when you have a weight problem and you're going into high school, it's not the greatest way to start off your high school career. So sure. I quickly found alcohol when I was in high school, and that made me feel like, okay, and everyone's not better than me anymore. I don't feel so left out as I did. And it just gave me something that I didn't have myself, which was like confidence and the feeling of, okay, I am worthy. I'm one of my peers now. So I took that and I ran with it, and I did that through high school. And
sorry to interrupt, Kelly.
Yeah.
Growing up like that and seeing alcohol being used heavily in the house, that was very much the same for me. And it's something that were you the type of kid that was watching this and associating that with how to be an adult and how to relax or how to celebrate? Or is this something that this is life? You're watching your parents and like, well, this is just part of life, alcohol. before that, and obviously you had sounds like you had some self-esteem issues going into high school, and when you did find it, it solved all those issues. It solved all those internal struggles. But did you view it as something that you might want to have in your life as you watch the adults in your house?
No, I didn't actually. In fact,
Hmm.
I said I would never do it. That's one of the things I said. Well, I see what happens at home when this goes
Yeah.
on. So I'm like,
Yeah.
why would I do that? That was my thought.
Right.
And so until I was about 10 years old, I did see the party happening though, because we had, like most families, we have
Hmm.
relatives over, they go to friends' houses, everyone's having a great time. So up until I was about, I guess, 10 or 11, I
Yeah.
didn't associate, I associated alcohol with adults having fun. But
Yeah.
when I saw the actual results of it in my own household, then my view of it actually started to change. In which case, I said, "Well, why would I want to do that?" That's
Of course.
until I hit 14, and I said, "Okay, well, people are starting to drink now. Let's see how that is." And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a game changer for me because, like you said, it gave me something that self esteem. It gave me that boost that I was looking for.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then I mean, it basically becomes your identity at that point, right? Because that's what you have to lean on, and I think for a lot of us, and that's the age too, right? Like that coming into high school, and you're very self conscious. You don't know where you fit in, and you find this like magic elixir, and it's like, okay, this is it. I'm the party guy. This is my role within my peers. I'm the party guy, and I can be crazy, and I can act like a fool, and they'll still laugh.
I don't think I've ever heard it put so well, so I so well relate to. This is my role. This is what I do within this group, Chris. And you nailed it. That's
Mhm.
exactly my experience, and I felt comfortable in that role. And even though people weren't looking at me like I thought they were looking at me, like some sort of hero
Yeah.
who drinks more than everybody else. Well, no, that's not what they thought. They're like, geez, probably they were thinking, gee, poor Kelly. I wish he would behave a little better
Yeah.
or be a little smarter or do a little bit more with his life other than just drink on weekends
Yeah.
and party. So, yeah, but my altered vision of how people thought of me, that was basically running my life. And so this is
Well,
what
for
I thought they
sure.
were thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that internal dialogue is what we take as fact, and so, whatever we think that you think of us is what you think of us. And I can so relate to that too, because, you know, for me, I had this idea of the life of the party and the guy who everybody, celebrated when I bust through the door with a case of beer and a pocket full of whatever substance I had, and it was like, yes, he's here. This is like he's arrived, and I look back and I think it was that way for a short time, a very very short time, but then what I what I expected, I think that the attitude or the tone changed. Instead of being like yes, he's here, it's like, oh, he's here. It's like the tone became like, okay, now here's the liability walking in the door,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Like this is getting a little old. I know you're, only 15, 16 years old, but okay, I
Yeah.
think it's time to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that. I get
for
that for
sure.
sure.
So where do you go from there?
Well, I mean, so I managed to graduate high school in five
Hmm.
years. I
Yep.
basically my grades took a back seat to being accepted by my peers through
Hmm.
drinking and through acting like a clown. Basically, is what my experience was. So everything else was put on hold so I could get your approval. Is
Right.
is is what it was like for me. And I took a few years off. I worked. I went to college when I was 22. Did
Mhm.
that for a few years and drinking, alcoholically, though maybe in my late teens, I wouldn't say that because I wasn't drinking every day. I wasn't, getting the shakes if I didn't drink or anything, but I would
Hmm.
drink to blackout quite
Right.
often, right? And that just progressed through my 20s, and the feeling of, I won't call it depression. I wasn't diagnosed with anything, but just that feeling of sadness and
Hmm.
not being a part of life that I saw everybody else living, even into my 20s, really,
Yeah.
really took a hold of me. And alcohol continued to be the answer that I sought to get rid of that problem.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I have a pretty good personality. I have a good sense of humor. I can relate to people and carry on a conversation. And so I did get some great work. I was working at a country club in close to where I lived, and I managed to get a cool job, my first ever sales job, selling some computer equipment, which I
Okay.
thought this is really cool. This is like a grown up job. I'm no longer a bartender.
Right.
This
Right.
is this is actually, it's cool. It can pay the bills, and so I did that for a while. The
Mhm.
alcohol still was taking a front seat to everything else,
Yeah.
and it was alcohol only and partying until I got to be about 30 years old when I first found cocaine. I'd say I was introduced to cocaine, but I had a bunch of friends that would casually use it. Like
Okay.
they were weekend users, but they
Yeah.
didn't. So they saw how I was around alcohol, which was,
Hmm.
irresponsible, blackout drunk, doing really stupid things that I wouldn't normally do. And they said, we better not show them this cocaine because
Yeah.
this might have a negative effect on our friend Kelly, because they were good friends and they liked me.
Yeah.
They were doing their thing. They were able to control it. But one night I saw what they were doing it, and I had my first small little line of cocaine, Chris. And for the next, I don't know, 2.5 hours, I was like on top of the world. I was talking
Right.
to every person that I ran. I thought I was the smartest guy in the room. We were at the pub across the street at this point, and I remember having a conversation with some guy about religion. And I'm not interested in, discussions about religion. I never was, and I'm not today. But I
Right.
was don't know what I was. But just like, yeah, I sounded so smart when I was talking to that guy. Like, this is really good. But
Yeah, that's right.
alcohol being the thing that was, the depressant, but cocaine brought me this way. And I discovered after I tried cocaine, that's the way I wanted to go.
Sure.
Not that I quit drinking, because alcohol was still my first love, but
Right.
I very quickly became, so with those friends, we would do it every other weekend, maybe get
Okay.
some, hang out, do it, go to the bar. But a couple months after that, I discovered that I'm a total isolator. So
Oh,
I would go seek it out on my own, and then I would get whatever I could afford. I would go back to my little basement apartment at the time in Toronto. I would
yeah.
lock the door, and I would just do it
Hmm.
by myself, and I would drink, and it became that was my party. And it's just looking back on it, and it's just such a depressing party for one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I can relate to it too because at a certain period of time, I went the same way, and I just turned into this. I would still go out socially, but um, I couldn't wait to be alone with it. I couldn't wait to be alone, and I would go downstairs into my basement, and uh, you know, I might have one other person, but I would prefer to be alone. And I just, because I could be as weird as I needed to be, I could do as much or as little. And I mean, there was never any as little as I wanted. It was always I could do as much as I wanted. I knew a guy that would drop it off to me. It was, and I would spend days at a time alone in my basement. And yeah, looking back at it, like what a lonely and sad way to live. And that's what I looked forward to. It's such a warped vision. Like,
Right.
why a drug that at one point made us the life of the party, social. We wanted to talk to everybody. We became these supermen,
Hmm.
and somehow it brought us to a place where we wanted nothing to do with anyone else. We wanted to be, you know, like hermits in our own homes and creep around our basements at, checking the locks on our doors and looking out our windows every once in a while.
It's just
Like,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
I get that for sure. I can remember. So, I had, and I still have some great friends. And I forget which birthday it was of mine, but they called me up and they're like, are you coming out tonight, Kelly? They were just having a couple of drinks at the bar. I go, man, sorry, I said I had to do this. He goes, because we're here celebrating your birthday, and we thought maybe you want to come by for a drink. And
Right.
that's just how it got. That's how it was for me. I'm like, wow, that's looking back on that. I'm like, and no, I didn't want to go out because, like you said, I
Yeah.
wanted to be at home in the safety and comfort where I could use as much as I wanted. I didn't have to share it. I didn't have to feel like I was being judged. I could
Yes.
just I could just be safe,
Yep. Yeah.
realizing that, my safe zone is often out to kill me.
For sure.
I
For
found
sure.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that. I mean, I also think it's interesting. Like you didn't touch that substance until age 30, which is
Yeah.
pretty late in life. For most people that get into it, right? Um, and escalated very quickly. Like you said, a couple months until you were just isolating with it, right?
That's right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was when I was using it by myself. So I remember after that, so it was maybe about a year of doing that and
Hmm.
just, not behaving like any of my friends who could casually use it on the weekends by myself. Like I said, sometimes I would still go out, but then I
Right.
remember one afternoon, it was a Saturday afternoon, where I can vividly remember where I was and what I was doing as in my apartment. And at this point, it was Sirius XM radio had just come to Canada. I was really excited because I could listen to the Howard Stern show again
Right.
on my radio. So I was at home listening to that. I go, having a couple of drinks because it was like, late morning or early Saturday afternoon. I said, well, I'd like to get some cocaine
Hmm.
now. And I was fairly new to Toronto at that point. So I didn't really know, I didn't want to call my friends. I don't want to like seem like I'm a drug addict or anything. So I don't want to talk to anyone I know, but I'll see if I can go find some
Okay.
a little further downtown. I said, well, I know there's some really shady areas around here, here, and here. I said, I'll go over there and see if I can buy some cocaine. And
Hmm.
so I went there, and unbeknownst to me, you can't just buy a bag of nice powder cocaine off the street. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you can somewhere. I don't know where that place is, but where
Yeah.
I went, all you could buy was crack.
Hmm.
And after I quizzed a bunch of people about, hey, can I buy cocaine? Finally, I saw this one young dude that I had initially saw, and he sold me, I think, about $35 worth of crack. And he went over to the little store because I didn't know what to do with this stuff. Right.
Right.
I'm like, I'm wearing a golf shirt. I got like khakis on and I'm down there doing this stuff. I felt so out of place, which
Sure.
honestly for me was pretty exciting. Like that was some part of the allure for me of smoking crack was like, I don't think I belong here. So
Hmm.
I kind of like the excitement and a little bit of danger.
Right.
On my life lacked excitement and any sort of risk taking, like
Okay.
healthy risk taking. So I really latched onto that very quickly. So
It's checked some boxes for you that otherwise
totally
weren't being checked. Yeah, that's
right.
interesting. I think that is. I was talking to somebody the other day about that, and we were talking about sometimes the hunt for drugs was more exciting than the actual use of drugs. It
Hmm.
was like because we knew we were, there was a possibility of getting caught, beat up, or jumped in or robbed in these areas, and like even though we were there often and we were like fairly accepted, it was dangerous. Like there's
Hmm.
I mean, no two ways about it, and yeah, that was the hunt to pick up was like such it brought me such a rush. And then when I finally found what I was looking for and I started doing it, it was almost like I want to go look for it again. That was the fun part. Like the doing, the finding of drugs was the excitement, but the doing of the drugs was like, okay, like now what? It
Right.
was, yeah, it got like that for me too, so I can relate.
Oh, totally. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, absolutely. So did you live, so where you live now and where you grew up, is that totally different for you? Or are you kind of in the same area as well?
So I live now in the same area that I grew up. But for me, when I was 17, I dropped out of school, moved out to New Zealand, came back after high school. I moved to the Caribbean, lived there for a year. I lived in the States for a little bit. I lived in Toronto for a bunch of years. Then I ended up going to school in Texas for a bit. I was always, for me, I was always trying to outrun my problems and my addictions and find a better life, reinvent myself, and not, just be Chris, not Chris the addict or the alcoholic. So for me, and I traveled a lot, just because I would just get in my car and go to Pittsburgh for the weekend and try to find it there. Like that was exciting for me, right?
That sounds exciting, actually. I'll be honest with you.
It was great. And you know uh so for me, like in my own area where I grew up, I mean, it's not a huge, I live in St. Catharines, right? So it's not huge. But what I found, like when I was living in bigger cities or traveling to other cities, that's where I found it was like the most exciting, because there was a hunt, you know.
Right.
um and then, back home, I kind of knew everybody that had it. It wasn't as exciting. I mean, uh, I mean, I still went and got it all the time, but it
Sure.
wasn't. Yeah, for sure.
It was just making a phone call and having it dropped off. You didn't actually have to find a shady area of town and go actually put yourself in harm's way to find it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast is brought to you and sponsored by Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Another Road offers a client-centered recovery program tailored to every individual's circumstances. Their focus is to create a supportive, healing environment rather than a rigid, rule-based institution. Their dedicated commitment upholds the individual values, respecting each person's desire for recovery. Another Road understands that every individual requires a unique and focused approach to their recovery. Certain modalities of treatment are introduced along with the tools necessary for each client. Located in a rural setting, their addiction treatment center for all genders provides the perfect setting for a transformative recovery experience and sense of belonging. The private residential treatment facility offers an unparalleled program with counselors that have in-depth knowledge based on varying years of experience in addiction. Another Road utilizes unique, individual-focused plans for recovery that address the complexities of drug addiction, alcoholism, and prescription medication misuse. They have a 65% success rate when clients follow their program. I know many people who have completed this program, and they have absolutely rave reviews. To learn more, visit anotherroad.ca.
I always say like the alcohol was sort of taking me down like this, and then cocaine like this. And then when I found crack, it just I just went off the edge, right? That's when I got heavily into debt. That's when my work life had started to absolutely suffer. I had another sales job at this point, a great job with an amazing company who were always so good to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's when everything just sort of went to hell. And I mean, talking about finding it in different areas with that company, I finally came to the point where I thought, oh, I really can't stop this on I'm gonna have to get some help, right? When I had what I call an aborted suicide attempt back in 2006, because I just saw my life so out of control that I could never, ever put it back together, which obviously is not true. It's not true for anybody, but that's just the way I was thinking back then. So I did go to detox for a week, and I went to rehab for 3 weeks after that. I thought, oh, fuck. I said, thank God that's over. Like that's because I didn't really know anything about what I was up against.
Right.
Good for the rehabs. They taught me everything they could in 21 days. And if I had only listened and did what they told me to do, things would have been different. But I mean, just getting back to your point about finding it in other cities, I was on a work trip. That employer had just given me a month off to do this stuff. And they were well aware of my problem at this point. And so we were down south, and I said, okay, Kelly, you're not going to drink. You're not going to do drugs. This is obviously, you have no idea what's going on around here. So before I left, like, I was having some sane thinking, saying, well, no, of course you're not going to go smoke crack in South Carolina. You don't live here. You don't know where to get it.
Right.
But I think it was day one or day two. I found out. I found out exactly where I was going to get it from, because I asked the girls in the credit department. I said, okay, how am I going to find out how to find this stuff? Right. And I asked her, I said, I started talking about the drug problems we have in Toronto. I don't know how I crowbarred that into the conversation, but I did somehow. And she said, and I said, you guys are lucky you don't have those problems here. She said, oh yeah, we do. I said, well, yeah. I said, but not, this is nice. And not around here. She's like, well, yeah, she said, stay away from Nickeltown. Don't go anywhere around there. And I said, okay. So there it was. That was in my memory bank. Now I remember calling the cab, and he shows up at the hotel. He said, where are you going? I said, Nickeltown. He said, do you have a gun? I thought he was joking. I said, no. He's like, well, be careful. But that was, again, I'm like, okay, let's go. I mean, I found it, and I got let go from that job in the nicest way they could possibly do it, because I went missing for 2 days in a different country, and the HR department is searching for me down there in South Carolina. And it was, but again, it was part of it was the excitement, like you were saying.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this is common for all addicts. It's really interesting that no matter where we go, we have this like sixth sense about where to go, who's got it. Like, I could walk into a bar and know who was holding, who wasn't. I could tell by the way people were postured, that where they were standing in the bar. I have a good idea that those people have it. Those people know where to get it. And it doesn't matter where in the world I went. I found it in no time. It was like, and I used to joke about it. I used to say like, oh, I went there, I went to move to the Caribbean thinking that I was going to reinvent myself, but the drugs found me, and like people would just roll their eyes at me, and we as addicts are very resourceful people when it comes to our drug of choice, and how to get it, where to get it, and how to source it out, right?
Yep.
It's
We've got that brain. We have that, and we can. It's so amazing that we can actually use that for good purposes now. That which I love, recovery.
That's something that again, I just had this conversation. I want to say it was yesterday with somebody at the recovery house, just talking about addicts are very smart people, very resourceful people that made some really terrible decisions in their life, but when we get sober and we still carry those skills, like they're not great skills when we're in active addiction, but when we're in recovery, we can flip those skills to work, for the good of, what we're doing or who we're around or our community. They are very transferable skills that, when used properly in recovery for, the right meaning, the right purpose. I think that addicts, and I think that's why we see a lot of ex-addicts or addicts in recovery just thriving in their lives, and like, opening businesses, doing, like creating things, and just being like, one thing after another. We're able to take on more, more things because we've got this like this way to manage our lives now. And yeah, it's really interesting to see people who, like us, who at one point everybody looked at and thought they're never going to amount to anything, and to flip that script and use that, our adversities and our what we once saw as our biggest weakness, now our biggest strength.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll probably relate to me with this, but I find myself thinking, okay, back when I was using, when the urge to use or the obsession came, there was no other option for me. I was going to use, right. And
Right.
so it was like I had only one choice. There was no plan B. And I find in recovery, as much as I can put myself in the position where I don't have a plan B, that's when I can use the resilience of,
Yes.
and I won't call it the addict, because that's just the way you are. That's the way I am. We're that type of person. If the more I don't have a plan B, the more successful I am. So I love thinking about that when it comes to recovery and when it comes to life in general.
Yeah.
Escape plans really get in the way. I proved that to myself when I was out there seeking drugs. One goal, no problem. 5 goals, okay, that could be confusing.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great way to put it, and I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So so now you're let go of this job, and you had already been to a rehab and detox. Is there any thought there in your mind, like, okay, now, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of guilt, shame, and remorse associated with losing a job and the run that you went on in South Carolina. But is there a voice in your head saying like, you remember those things you learned, and you remember the tools that they gave you in rehab? Like maybe it's time to open the tool chest.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely had that thought. And so this was back at the end of 2006. I was actually back living with my parents at that point. They I won't say they begged me. They said, look, we want to do our best to help you out. They were always so amazing that way. And so I was living back with them. I remember my dad picking me up at the airport when I came back from there, right? He had access now to my online banking and saw exactly what was going on, but didn't want to freak out or anything, because I had spent a couple $1,000s up in cash advances because I didn't actually have any real money.
Right.
From my credit card. But from then and for the next several years, I was never out of recovery. Trying to get recovery. I didn't swear it off. I've been a yes man for a long time. So if you tell me I think this is going to be good for you, I will try it. I will definitely try it because I want to make you happy. And in this case, going to 12-step meetings, doing things that are more beneficial to my mental health other than a detriment to my mental health. I would try those things, but I wouldn't do enough to make the change in my identity to become that person who no longer has to use drugs or drink to feel complete. So that's kind of how it was for me for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I did manage to get back to another 2 treatment centers, which again, they were great. I managed to get myself arrested in one of them just because I was still using when I went in there, and I managed to hide that from them. Me and my roommate there, we were up to some no good stuff, and I ended up getting arrested after committing a robbery while I was in a treatment center.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that led me to being, living in a shelter for a couple of months after that. And after I was, while I was in that shelter, I can remember thinking about my past and how not great it was, but okay, you had a great job. You were making some good money. You had a car. You had a home. And here we are. I remember sitting on the railroad tracks in the middle of, I don't know what it was, February maybe, drinking beer by myself going, okay, is this it? Is this where we're at right now? So I made a decision at that point. That was 2008 to say, okay, Kelly, you are better than this. So let's do something about it. I ended up going to my third and final treatment center. Okay. And actually spent 6 months there, which, hey,
that's a good stay.
It was a great stay. And I enjoyed every bit of that stay. I got to stay. It was a beautiful setting up north in Ontario. And I did everything they told me to do, which I usually did anyway. But I came out of there and I managed to continue my sobriety for about a year and a half total.
Okay.
Which was awesome. And I was proud of it, and I should have been proud of it, and I'm still proud of it today.
Sure.
But I decided I wanted to move. And I always say to people, hey, you want to move and recover, relocate. People will say, well, it's what do they call it? Geographical cure. But I'm like, sure. Hey, you want to go adventure? Go move somewhere else and do stuff. By all means, go have some fun. But, make sure you have a plan in place before you go, which I didn't have. So I moved not too far from where you are. I moved to Niagara-on-the-Lake, and got a great job at a great property with a beautiful apartment supplied to me by the owner of the actual hotel.
Oh, wow.
And I had it made. Like, really, it was a really cool experience for me. But I wasn't doing anything for recovery. That was my problem. I was doing 12-step meetings before, and hey, for me, I still go to 12-step meetings. I know there are many more solutions out there than that, but that's just what I had chosen at the time.
Yeah.
And, but I wasn't doing any more of that. So I was isolating again, and I was living in this beautiful apartment. I would go to work. I would come home. I would drink coffee, and then I would kind of repeat the next day. So I was just bored. I was bored. I wasn't excited. I had no real future lined up. So I ended up relapsing after, a year and a half of having no substances in my body. I whipped myself into shape too. I was looking good. I was feeling good. I quit smoking because I was a 20-year smoker as well.
Yeah.
And, but no, it just came to me one night. You're going to smoke crack tonight. And that was it. I went to St. Catharines, your favorite city there.
I was going to say, it's tough to find crack in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Well, it's not not
impossible, but yeah,
it is. Yes. I did have it. I had it delivered there afterwards. I went to St. Catharines and found it there. And that was, at the start of another 3-year, not run, but you know what I'm saying. 3 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Before I became clean in 2011 for good and for all. So thankfully that's, but just goes to show me if I'm not working on myself through recovery, through goals, through trying to physically better myself by challenging myself, I'm not going to stay sober. I'm trying to get too comfortable. I'm trying not to take risks. I'm trying not to fail. And that just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really interesting. A couple things there. The geographical cure, as we know, we take ourselves with us wherever we go.
Sure.
The two things I think that are, two of the biggest culprits of a relapse are boredom and loneliness, right? We have our old friend, whichever our substance of choice is, and that will solve both those problems. So, I think you touched on an important piece there, like not having a plan in place, not seeking out a community or meetings, or whether it could be as simple as, you're into a certain sport and you find, say you like boxing, you find a boxing club and you start to meet healthy people in there that aren't using crack every day, because there's not a whole lot of boxers. I mean, you probably go a couple good rounds on crack, but not on a regular basis. I think that having a plan in place where you can find a community, and be a part of something and stay connected with your recovery is super. It's like that is paramount for, the longevity of anyone's recovery. But when we go somewhere else, we, for some reason, we neglect that piece. We think, oh, new setting, new people, new everything. Nobody will know that I'm an addict. I don't have to go to these things. And it bites a lot of us in the ass. And, another thing that you did mention is, that period of time where you were involved in 12-step meetings, but you weren't fully committed. So like you were one foot in the door, but you still had one out. And I think that is a really important piece, because it's something that I can very much relate to, because I spent 10 years in and out of the 12-step rooms or treatment centers, day treatment, whatever it may be. And, I look back at it today and I said, oh no, it doesn't work. AA doesn't work. NA doesn't work. CA doesn't work. This treatment doesn't work. But I wasn't working it. I was taking up a seat. I was actually being incredibly selfish by taking up a space that somebody who had the willingness that I didn't have at the time could have been sitting in that chair. But I was just sitting there, whether it was to appease another person or to get the cops off my back, to get work, stop asking questions, so I could say, look, I'm doing something about my problem. But I never went into those rooms with the plan of like, you know what, this is the start of the rest of my life. This is something that I'm going to do just for today, for the rest of my life. It was like, I got to do this for, I got to do this for a few weeks so people stop asking questions.
Right.
But the really interesting, and, of course, I didn't get active in my meetings. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't get a home group. I didn't do any service work. I didn't work at this. I had the book, but I used it for everything but reading. I propped windows open with it. I'd use it for chopping up coke on. I just used it for whatever I could use it for, that I didn't have to open it and actually read those words in the book and actually like get into the text. And I somehow thought that I was gonna gain some sort of recovery through osmosis from just being around the people and going to the meetings. I thought that, I hear people say, do 90 meetings in 90 days. And, and to me, that meant just show up to 90 meetings in 90 days, not actually participate, not actually get active in the meetings. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short. And I did for 10 years, not realizing that every time I went in those rooms, I think that seeds were being planted. And 10 years later, I was finally able to water those seeds. But, not being a part of a group, not being active, not, just taking up a seat, it really didn't work. It made me that they say like a dry drunk or whatever. So I'm just abstinent at that point. I'm not working on a solution. I'm not finding out about like what makes me tick or why I'm an addict. And that's a really scary place to live, as you know, right? Like,
yeah.
When you're involved, or you're showing up to meetings, but you can't get it together. You can't figure out, why is this not working? And, the last place that we want to look is back at ourselves and say, well, it's not working because you're not working it.
Right.
Was that the experience you had?
For those 5 years, yes, absolutely. That was my, like, I would go for that year and a bit when I had my sobriety. 6 months of those were in treatment, and then the 6 months after that, or the 8 months or whatever it was, I was heavily involved, and I was doing my thing, and I was on fire, and everything was great. And I get my 1 year, celebration, and I'm patting myself in the back, and I just thought I was the greatest guy that's ever been to a 12-step meeting, which is fine. Right. And it's fine. I was proud of myself, and so I should have been. But
sure.
So for that brief period, I was involved, and I was doing what was right. And
okay.
But I stopped doing that. And before that and after that, for a certain time, that's exactly where I was, save for that year when I was like fully invested, when I actually stayed sober and was pretty happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the kind of complacency kills us, right?
Yeah. So when you say you were 10 years doing that, were you clean for those 10 years? Were you sober?
Oh God, no.
Okay.
I was in 10 years, I probably collected 60 Desire chips.
Gotcha.
I was popping in and out of the rooms of recovery as I said, to appease other people or to get myself out of a jam that I had got myself into.
Okay.
I would collect maybe 3 weeks of clean time or abstinence, I guess. And sometimes that would look like, hey, I just need to, I'm gonna stop doing drugs. I'm just gonna drink, or vice versa. Or, I'd manipulate the program to suit my needs at the time. Or, I tested out every theory that I could possibly think up. Right. Drinking, no drugs, drugs, no drinking, only drinking on the weekends, or only, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I got to stay sober. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty much sobriety, like I tricked myself. Right. And it was all manipulations. Yeah. Manipulations. And, with no, I was just spinning my tires. And when I showed up to those rooms, I was basically, it was deep down. I knew that I needed it. Deep down, I was very jealous and very envious of the people in the rooms that had lasting recovery, that looked happy, that looked, they were capable of love. They were capable of compassion and empathy and all the things, the qualities that I wished that I could have and that I believe I had as a child, and I missed that about myself, and I saw it in others, but I was too scared to let go of my substances, and even more scared to look another human being in the eye and say, I need help. Like, I need you to show me how to live, because the way I'm doing it is just not working.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you had those 3 weeks, let's say, like, were you thinking like, oh, I'm screwed? Or were you thinking, oh yeah, I can do this for the rest of my, or this is going to last? What were your thoughts?
No, I always had I had always an exit strategy. Like, I'll do it for as long as people stop asking questions, or as soon as people start to tell me like, wow, you look better, your skin doesn't look gray today, like I can finally see your eye, I can see the whites of your eyes, that's different, or like it just like, you've got some life in you, you've got some life in your eyes, that's and I would take that as okay, boxes checked, I've recovered. In my mind, now let's go celebrate my graduation of addiction treatment, I guess. And that was all internally. That's what I was thinking. But really, I cared more about the perception that you thought that I was doing well. And once I got that box checked, or whether it was a partner that I had that were to say like, I'm leaving you unless you do something about this, is a problem. And then when she might say, hey, this is great, you're doing great, I'm proud of you, I took that as my cue to like, okay, she's proud of me. Now watch me go drink and use like a normal person.
Okay.
And because I wasn't, as I said, I wasn't learning about recovery, so I thought that it was possible for me to ingest substances and drink as a quote unquote normal person. And I tested that out, of course, to no avail for years.
Yeah.
And then I have another excuse. But yeah, I never had the thought of I can make this my new life. I can, recovery, this is the way I want to live. But I will say this, every time I did do it, every time I did get that chunk of time without the substances, I'd go back a lot harder than I had before, because I think, my brain would tell me, hey, you've lost some time. Let's make up for that time. Let's go extra hard. You deserve it. And the other thing that I didn't realize is every time I was going into those meetings and feeling what it was like to be around people in recovery, it made getting fucked up so shitty. Like I felt a lot like, it didn't bring me relief anymore. It brought me just guilt and shame, because like, I finally, I knew, because before I used to think everybody lived the way I lived. I didn't really realize that, people in these rooms were actually living a happy life, and they were sincere about being happy to be sober. I thought there's no way anybody could be happy to be sober.
That's right.
But now I saw it and I felt it with these people. And that made every time I drank and used, it made it, very shameful and very, and I would remember the times where people said, I'm proud of you. And, where the girl might say, this is the guy that I miss, this is the guy that I met. This is who I've wanted you to be. And I just feel shame because, I took it upon myself to kind of shatter that version of me that I did, that was possible. Cause I showed myself, you can be without the substance, but what I didn't do is get into the work and realize, answer the question. And as we talked about the other day, the question of what's next, what do I do now? Like, now that I'm not, now that I'm not getting messed up every day, how do I start to change my life? How do I move forward? What's the next best move here? What's the next right move for me to make in order to make my life that, 1% better every day, to kind of cultivate a life that I could, just dream of at that point?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, it took me a long time to get to that point as well. So I totally relate to that. Yes.
After 3 suicide attempts and I just a pure self-loathing, and I was so disgusted in myself, and I had to get to a point where I realized that I used to go into the rooms and compare myself to other people and say, that hasn't happened to me. That hasn't happened to me. I'm not, I haven't, I'm not homeless. I've got a job. I've got a roof over my head. I've got food to eat. And I'm listening to people talking about, being homeless, eating out of a garbage can, having all their things repoed, and, not having enough to buy, to feed themselves that day. And I kept saying, like, I compare myself, and my sponsor, or I shouldn't say sponsor, he was kind of like a temporary sponsor, somebody that was like bringing me to meetings and kind of probably waiting for me to ask him to be my sponsor. But I always say, I'm not like these people. That hasn't happened to me. And he'd always answer with one word. He'd say, yet. Mm-hmm. That just hasn't happened to you yet. You keep going the way you are going, that I promise you all that stuff will happen to you. And all those things, they started happening to me. And then I realized, I'm no different than anybody in those rooms. And finally I was able to relate to them and actually, reach my hand out and say, I need the help. I need you guys to show me how to live. This episode is sponsored by Carousel Tattoo and Barbershop. Custom tattoos and traditional barbering exceptionally tailored for each individual. Located in the historic lakeside community of Port Dalhousie, Ontario, Carousel Tattoo and Barbershop creates from their passion and dedication to the craft, combining traditional standards of uncompromising quality and exceptional service with modern craftsmanship to create a one-of-a-kind tattoo experience and head-turning cuts. Their aim is to continuously improve their skill set and give back to their trade and local community in a positive and impactful way. Visit Carousel Tattoo and Barbershop in Port Dalhousie, Ontario. What was the turning point for you when you in 2011 when you decided that kind of enough is enough, and what was there an event or a mental shift that was made that kind of cued you to say, okay, this time for real?
Yeah, there was. And it was, between say 2008, 2011, I did have brief periods of sobriety, I think up to 7 months at one point, but then I would relapse, It's not like I wasn't going to meetings. It's not like I wasn't getting involved. It's like, I was doing some of the stuff, the recovery stuff over here. But I can remember my last ever run was August of 2011. And it was out there for, excuse me for a second, it was the August long weekend here. And it was, I don't know, an internet date. And it didn't, it didn't go all that great. And I said, well, I'm going to go use for the rest of the weekend. And what happened was, I think maybe I had a couple of months I was throwing away, a couple of months of sobriety I was throwing away. So I did that for a couple of days, and I was done. I remember I was at this particular crack house, and I would say, okay, I'm done. And I would walk down the hill, and then I would see the bank, and I go to the bank, and I get in $100, and I go back. And every time I would go back, they'd be like, holy fuck. They're like, okay, come on in. I guess you're going to come. Like even they were kind of like, are you serious? You're back, and we know that's the behavior. Like, okay, I'm going to stop. Okay, well, just one more.
Yeah.
but finally after this, you know, I was having family members come and pick me up because I finally let them know where I was, because they were so worried about me. I'd been missing for a couple of days. Yeah. Honestly, I had money in the bank still. I still had a job. I still had a car. I hadn't crashed my car. I wasn't in any legal trouble. Wasn't my lowest bottom. Didn't want to kill myself. And I thought, as I was on the grass waiting for that ride at the gas station, I thought, Kelly, you know, if you don't, your life is going to be shitty until the day you die, and you are not going to have any fun. You're not going to get to do anything that you want to do. You're not going to leave any positive footprint on this planet. You're going to leave only the sadness that you cause your family and your friends if you don't do something about this today, like starting now. And I think realizing that, okay, I do have the capability to have a life, because I've seen myself try to work on myself, and good things do happen when I put the work in.
Yeah.
I thought if you just do what everyone else does, let's just say in recovery, you're going to get your version of what they have. And that's something that I had to actually get smacked in the head by, like, Kelly,
yeah.
but you have to do what successful people do. You can't do your own thing. You know, what I want is different from what you want, and that's cool. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there's a certain path that we can both take and get slightly different results based on what we want. And that's kind of what came to me that day, where it's like, Kelly, if you don't want your life to suck until the day you die, you're going to have to do something starting now. And that really changed it for me. And from then until now, I've obviously stayed in recovery, but I've also said, okay, like you said, what's next? What do I want to do with my life? Right. Since then, I've changed so many things, which I was afraid to change from 2006 to 2011. I just didn't want to get outside of my comfort zone, take any risks, because I might fail and you might judge me.
Right. And so, sorry to interrupt, but good. You know, and this is something I've heard you say, the one thing that never let you down was your substance, right? Crack never let you down. So that was something that wasn't like the unknown. We knew what we were getting when we went and picked up our drug of choice. But actually doing something where we didn't know the outcome, well, that's scary to us, right? So actually that is the, you know, that to me, that's the exciting part about recovery now. But in early recovery, that is a terrifying thought. What if I take a chance? What if it doesn't work? You know? Yeah.
For sure. And it, for me, it went back to, okay, but what will everyone think of me if I try something new and I fail? Or if I tell someone, hey, here's what I'm thinking of doing. You're like, you can't do that. That's what I always worried about, right? I still do to a certain point, but not nearly as bad as it was before. But that's why I had to start living. I mean, like, it's not rocket science for me. It's like, Kelly, if you're not excited about your life today, excited about your future, if you don't somehow build confidence by doing stuff, you're going to go back to smoking crack, because like you said, that has never let me down. So that's what I've continued to do. And I mean, I love one of the things that I know you're a fitness guy as well, obviously. And man, I took up running, I don't know, let's say 10, 12 years ago. And that's something that I'm like, man, if I didn't have fitness in my recovery, I don't think I would be sober still today. It's just such a huge, satisfying, fun part of my recovery. Like you mentioned before, join a sports group. So I joined a running group.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer. It's you can run solo all you want, which is great. And I still do that often, but just joining this group and saying, I remember I said to them, listen, I want to run my first marathon, but I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. So, to go there, to ask them for help, to pay them some money to be a member. And then they showed me what to do. And man, to like actually go and complete my first marathon with them was just like this amazing feeling of accomplishment. Something that, like, would I have thought that when I was 30 pounds overweight, smoking all those cigarettes, drinking, using drugs, that I would be like, I can remember being in Las Vegas. I ran the Las Vegas Marathon. And it was the coolest thing. So it's a nighttime marathon.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah. So you run it on the strip. You start and finish on the strip. But I remember being at the Bellagio after I finished that race, looking at the fountains, just going, did you ever think something like this would be able to happen? Right. And it's just like, wow, I'm doing stuff. And that's, for me, that's where the confidence comes from. Because if I can do this, then I can do it again. And if I can do that, I can do something even better. You know, it's pretty cool.
And it's the things that were in our, not in our wildest dreams could we achieve these things when we were out there using. And today, we're checking those, we're stacking up those wins and doing the things that, we thought never for me. And something I heard you say there that was really, really interesting is that, you went to the running group and you asked for help.
Right.
Very similar to what you have to do in recovery. You have to go to the meeting or go to the treatment center. You have to go to somebody, the counselor, and ask for help. You had to admit that you don't know what you're doing. I want to do this thing, but I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Right.
I need help, right? You had to pay them some money, which, hey, the price of admission for addiction recovery is a lot more than what you paid that running club, right?
Yep.
Like we pay
sure.
The price of admission for recovery is, you don't even want to know
right.
Nobody wants to know what that number is, right? But and then you did it as a community, you did it as a group together. You had people to to lift you up, show you the way, people that had done it before. So and that's your quasi sponsor or mentor, right? In the running world, right? Like somebody to say, these are the miles you got to run today. This is how you work up to that level. Well, those are your steps that you're taking. Those are the little wins that you're, it's really, really interesting the way, everything in life kind of works off the same model as recovery. And I think that's why it works so well. But, we have to go and we can't do any of this stuff alone. We need help. We need to, and we have to, we have to show some humility, like, to say, I think sometimes, especially as men, right, we don't like to say, hey, we want to do something, but we have no idea why, or I'm sorry, we have no idea how.
Yeah.
And so that's a hard conversation for a lot of us to have, but showing that humility, and the more times you do that, the more comfortable it gets. And the results are so much greater when you can finally say to somebody like, listen, I respect you for what you've done and where you've gone in your whatever field that is. Now, I'm just starting out here, and I'd love your insight. I'd love to, to piggyback on some of that. And, it does wonders for, I bet you that, that running group who kind of showed you the way to your first marathon also got back the same way a sponsor gets back, or somebody who's helping another addict out there gets back so much by helping. Well, I bet you they got that same feeling and that same sort of, it's an equal share sort of thing of knowledge and gratitude and experience. Well, showing somebody how to do something, there's no greater feeling than teaching somebody how to do something that somebody taught you how to do, right? So
for sure,
passing that knowledge is so amazing.
It is, man. It is. Well, and one of the things I love about, I guess you can equate this to any sort of maybe fitness goal, but also in recovery. So I got to know, very closely a few of our members, but they were a lot faster than me. Yeah. So, and I've been taught since I've been in recovery, look, if you want to get better at anything, go hang out with the people that are way better than you are. Like you're going to be intimidated. But if you want to just, feed your ego and go run with the slow people, go ahead. But you're never going to get any better. You're never going to get any better. Go try to keep up with these people and just see what happens. And for me, that really, I mean, like I remember my first marathon, I think was a 3 hours, 49 minutes. And then back in, when I ran the New York City Marathon, I was around 3:23. But just like the training and the hanging out with these fast people and trying to keep up with them over about I think it was a 3-year period, just saw some just exponential growth. But yeah, you gotta challenge yourself,
You got to hang out with the winners. You got to hang out with the, you, and I totally feel that for the sports that I do, like combat sports, like, yeah, sure, I can go spar with the newbies, and I can feel like, and I can feel great about myself, but do I really? Unfortunately with my sports, it hurts a lot more to hang out with the guys who are much better than you. But, I'll take a few black guys and some sore shins and ribs if I'm learning, and, I'm actually growing that way. But, having people who are much better than you, really does push you. And I think that, they get a lot from that too, right? They get somebody that's hungry for knowledge. So it keeps them on their toes, right? It keeps them like, hey, Kelly's actually picking up some speed. He's coming up on us. We got to, we can't get complacent here. We got to stay on our game too.
That's right. You're damn right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
It's really fun. And, and I think that's a huge piece. And, we talked a lot about it the other day, like just having hobbies in recovery and having, goals in those hobbies that you take up in recovery, to really push you to, like, for me, if I know I have a fight coming up, well, I'm going to be in the gym every day. My eating's going to be on point. I know I got to make a certain weight. I've got that goal ahead of me, and it doesn't take over my life. Of course, my recovery comes first, because if I don't have that, I don't get to do any of those things. But having that clear goal ahead of me and something to work for, I mean, it's a feeling like none other. And that's what really lights the fire under me and gets me, invigorated for life again. Right. Like, and I think we talked about this the other day as well. Like, we don't get clean and sober to become boring people or to spend our lives sitting in church basements talking about how shitty our days were, or talking about the steps. Like, I don't want to talk to, I love addicts in recovery. I love talking to addicts in recovery, but I don't want to talk to addicts in recovery all day.
No,
I need to be out there with normal people doing normal things, achieving things that I want for myself, that are my things. Of course, I have my recovery life, but I need my life too. And my things that are uniquely for me, and a core group of friends that aren't in recovery that I can just look at as healthy people that, they didn't have to go through what we did to get here, but they're huge examples for me on, like, how to live a good, healthy life with, like, morals and values that I can be proud of.
Definitely.
That's what I really love about, what you've created with Life Beyond Sobriety, with this community. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I think it's that answering that question of, like, what's next or what now in recovery. I think that's the piece that a lot of people are missing in their recovery. And that's I think that's a great place to go, because anybody listening to this, I hope anybody that's listening to this in recovery might be asking that question, like, what do I do next? And this is, I think, a great place to look, is to your program.
Thanks, man. I think if we're not asking ourselves that question, we're in big trouble. And I can just say that from years of experience of relapsing, because I was just, again, I was bored. I was told once, if you're bored, you're boring. And that's just the way it was for me. So yeah, I was never looking for okay, what's next? So I've been coaching for a little over 3 years now. And halfway through there, I thought the reason I got into coaching was because I saw way too many people get clean or sober in meetings, stay involved in the meetings, but do nothing else with their lives. Right. And eventually, for most of them, not all of them, they would go back out. Some of them died. And I'm like, well, this is, but I saw, like, people just staying in that little comfort zone and not taking risks. Yeah. And at this point, I was starting to live that way where I was doing stuff. I was starting businesses. I was trying new things. I was doing things that I was always afraid of, but I was okay with it now. I thought I said, a lot of these friends of mine, if they had the advantage of having someone take them through the next step of their life, because people are sort of, if I'm involved in a 12-step group, I get more pats on the back than anything else, just because I'm sober today. And for me, that is not a good recipe to make me succeed. If I'm going to just go to a meeting and do nothing but that, and you're going to tell me I'm good, perfect. That's all I needed to hear. I got your approval, right? Yeah. I think people need to hear that. All right, that's great, but good is not good enough for drug addicts and alcoholics. We can't be happy with average, because if we are, we're going to be in big trouble. That's my experience. So for me, this whole group is about, the Life Beyond Sobriety group is about identifying what the members of the group want individually. You're going to figure out what you want your future to look like. And so many people, including myself, up to a few years ago, I didn't have any vision of my future. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I never thought even to look at it. So that's what we do in the group. We get pulled by the vision of our future. I always say to the people in there, I said, your future will not be ignored. I don't care. You can tell me that you're living in the moment as much as you want. That's fine. That's great. But you're living in the moment based on what you think your future is going to look like. That's just the way I feel, and that's what I firmly believe. Right, the best present comes from knowing that I have a big future. Right, so living presently means living purposefully, and that's why I love this group and that psychology so much. So we have people come in who are in recovery, and we'll do coaching twice a week. But I've got a bunch of strategies that I'll teach, and the community, we have a discussion, and we keep each other accountable. And so we actually have a team rooting for us, but not just to stay sober. I mean, sobriety is important, but that's not the main reason for the group. It's the next step. So
right. Yeah.
We are public about our goals. So we all know what each and every one of us is going after, so we can keep each other accountable. When I tell you what my goals are, Chris, I am so much more apt to actually achieve them because I don't want to let you down. So when I go public and I tell people and I post it on social media or whatever I do, that's a huge advantage to me achieving my goals. Yeah. And we keep each other accountable as well. We'll call each other out on our shit if we're slacking for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we need that.
Yeah, man. And we do healthy habit challenges every month as well, which is great. We're doing, we're in the middle of one right now. We did the Compound Effect, which is one of my favorite books by Darren Hardy there. And we did a Compound Effect challenge, right? Make one small change in your life. And, we do it for 21 days and hopefully it becomes a habit forever. But just seeing what some of the people did, like, you cut this small thing out of your diet, and how's that going to look over a year, right? It's just an amazing thing that we did there. And the progress that we're able to see in each other once we do this and we stick with our plan, right? We're going to do our vision for say 3 years. We'll pull one really big goal that we want to laser focus on and just work on that goal every day, right? We don't go crazy and obsess over about, okay, I haven't reached my goal yet. We always use the strategy to measure where we were to where we are today. And it's nice to have that picture on that vision on the horizon, but let's more focus on the success that we've had up to this point and keep working toward the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. I think what something that I heard there is that that I really liked is, we have to live in the present purposefully. And, we always hear this, we can't dwell on the past or obsess about the future. We got to, stay in the present, but we have to have, I'm always saying that if I don't have an idea of what my future looks like, I don't know how to live my present, or what I would like my future to look like. I don't have to have the exact picture of what it's going to look like, but a direction that I'm going and a goal that I've got. And it, because oftentimes it doesn't, if I set a goal, I reach it, but the goal doesn't look the same as I expected it to once I get there. But I've still met that goal, and I'm, as you said, I've become better incrementally on that in focusing on the present, but purposefully driven towards that goal. And I think where a lot of people get, I guess, mixed up with that is when they obsess about the future rather than, I really like that idea. The way you put it is fantastic. Living in the present purposefully, with that goal ahead of us. And because that's the way my life that's been the most productive and meaningful way that I've lived my life. And that's where I've seen the most results, I guess, if I'm living day by day and staying in the present, but like with a clear path to where I want my future to go. And, having a community to keep each other accountable is so fantastic. And I think that is, that is the biggest piece that anything in life, I think that community piece is what, where we all thrive. Right. Because, we can't do any of it on our own. We might be able to try, we might be able to get close to it, but if we don't have, for lack of a better term, like cheerleaders on our side, like rooting for us and also calling us on our shit when we become complacent, when we become lazy, when we become, you know, kind of like, what do they say, resting on our laurels, like you
Right.
know, proud of the things that we did 2 weeks ago. Um, if we don't have somebody say, that's great that you did that 2 weeks ago, but like, hey, what's today? Let's move on from there, right? Let's
That's
keep
right.
moving forward. And and having that community is just so amazing. And you know, I can't wait to have you know, our guys at Lakeside be a part of that community. And you know, I hope that you know, I hope to be a part of it as well. So you know, that is a really exciting thing, and I know that that's going to take off fantastically for you.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
Something I wanted to talk to you about was social media, because that's where, you know, that's where I found you, or I was actually shown your account by you know, a friend and my business partner. And I think your content is like absolutely fabulous. I love that you're so open and honest in your social media. I think it's a really meaningful page because it gives a lot of useful information. It, you know, we get to know a little bit about you and sort of like who you are, your story. But the thing that I love is the humor in it. You know, you're able to laugh at yourself, and you're able to laugh at, you know, your story and where you were and where you are today. You're able to pull a lot of, you know, humorous but real content from it. And you know, I show my wife every day. I'm like, now look at this one, and she loves it too. She's also in recovery, right? So
Cool.
yeah. And so and you know, Isaac, you know, my friend that showed me the page, like he's been following you for a while, and he's like, I love this guy, it's amazing. I just saw his page just like blow up over the last little while. And um talk to me a little bit about so, you know, social media being something that people are, you know, very addicted to, very you know, dependent on. Talk to me about sort of like what your vision was there in like creating healthy content that will keep people engaged. And you know, I think that it's a great place for people to learn about addiction, but also to have a lot of questions answered that they might be otherwise embarrassed to ask.
Right. Yeah. No, I get you. And I think for me, one of the most important parts of the social media, and I love being able to deliver the content with my sense of humor, because I've got, you know, I've always had a great sense of humor. And so I'm loving that I can, you know, without being a stand up comedian, being actually able
Yeah.
to use the humor in a good way. I'm so grateful for that. And that people are
Mhm.
actually really, seem to be really enjoying it.
Yeah.
What I love the most is I get so many direct messages from people that are not only afraid in their to reach out for help, like
Hmm.
at home in their community, but they're even afraid to like just comment on a post and say, hey, I have a problem as well. I'll get
Yeah.
these crazy, you know, cool, amazing direct messages from people that are just, you know, like saying, how can I start? Like, here's my situation, right? And I just love doing that. Um,
Yeah.
so, you know, I'm not going to say, okay, I need you to start detoxing today and do this. No, that's not what I'm there for. I'm a guy on the internet, right, with the experience. So, but I'll love to have these conversations with with these people, and so sort of say, okay, like, you know, you and I talked about this before, and I was speaking to a guy last night from Boston, and so he and I mentioned, you know, I said, you might want to check out an NA or a CA meeting, right? Me just assuming that everyone knows what the hell I'm talking about when I say an NA or a CA meeting.
Hmm.
And he goes, I don't, what is that? I said, oh, I said, I'm sorry. I said, well, I'll tell you something. I said, and I did a real quick search and found him a meeting list for his area. And he was so excited to say, oh, okay, this is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just so useful for that. And obviously I use it for business as well, which is great, and for promotion, but just the actual, I don't know if it's like, I really think that people see me as an actual human being on there. And
Yeah.
that's really what I appreciate from the people who will comment on my stuff or send me a direct message, and I still am blown away by the lack of negativity. You know,
Right.
I'll get the odd message like, "Hey, nobody cares, asshole, shut up." I'm like, "That's fine," and I get that because I get annoyed by people like me sometimes too, but I'll always engage them anyway because I don't get offended, and I'm very surprised at myself for not getting offended because I'm just
Yeah.
not that kind of person anymore. But I'll love it. I'll love them. I'll love on them. I don't give a shit. I'll send them a comment back and give them a little heart, whatever. No big deal. But it just seems to be like, hey, listen, we've got this really cool, media that actually can be put to some good use. I know, believe me, social media is not the greatest invention ever. It's not great for a lot of reasons, but if we can use it for some good reasons, I'm all for it.
100%. And yeah, social media is there's a scary world that, young people today are growing up with. Like, you and I didn't grow up with social media. We didn't grow up with cell phones or even the internet. So, for us, it's really interesting. I think, because we're seeing a generation of younger people coming up and, having their lives and their, emotions and their emotional state shifted by this social media world, this fake, make-believe place that doesn't even exist in real life. And there people are becoming very self-conscious, very a lot of anxiety and all these negative things. But then the people in the recovery space, and this goes for anybody in the advocacy space that's doing it in a way that is genuine and from lived experience. I think that we're very fortunate, because there's so many people out there like you and I who are just unapologetic about our recovery, and very outspoken. Like, we're recovering out loud because we know that sharing this with another, or with the social media world, may help save a few lives. And my experience has been very similar to yours in that way, that oftentimes the biggest problem I might have with social media, it's not negative comments, it's too many messages from people that are desperate for help.
Right.
And it's like, it becomes time consuming, where to the point where my wife is like, can you get off your phone, please? And it's hard, because we position ourselves as we're advocating for recovery and for this life that we have today, and we're being brought real-time, real life issues that sometimes are life and death, and we've been there. So and I think you and I both, and most people in this who are online and recovering out loud this way, I think most of us feel a duty to act when a direct message or a comment or somebody says, listen, like, what you posted today really, really moved me. And, I'm at the point where I think that I'm exactly where you were when you asked for help. Where do I go? How do I do this? What can I expect? What are the next steps? Or simply, I'm scared to ask for help, but I don't know you in real life, so I can tell you.
Yeah.
And it is a responsibility that we have as people in recovery, to answer all those, every direct message that comes through that is asking for help. But it also is, it's not something that we can't answer that with a blanket statement. Every answer, anybody sending a message like that deserves a genuine, personalized message back. So and I do very much the same as you. I'll ask them where they live, find a meeting list for a number of different modalities of recovery, and say, these are some things in your area that you can check out. Here's some that are 12-step based, here's some that are Buddhist based, here's some that is just like a smart recovery meeting. But here are your options here are your free options in your area where you can go get help. This saved my life, and that it can do that for you as well. And then, if they're looking for inpatient therapy, something like that, there's answers there for them as well.
Yep.
But at least we have the duty to point them in the right direction. But sometimes, oftentimes that takes a little bit of research from us. So it can be quite time consuming, but man, when you get that message 6 months later from that person, say, hey, do you remember me? I messaged you in April and I told you I had a problem. Well, I just celebrated 6 months clean today. And it's because of I wouldn't be here today if you didn't point me in the right direction. And, the gratitude that comes back from that, it's it's overwhelmingly positive, and that's what really drives me, as much as it can be a time consumer to be in front of your screen, posting things and making things look a certain way and crafting the right words for it. Well, when you get those messages back, it's like, yeah, that was really worth all that time that I put into either answering or posting or sharing something with another human. Because oftentimes I think, especially these days, that's a fairly anonymous way to reach out for help.
Yep.
And people can, across the globe, can reach out. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be in person. You don't have to be from the same city. You can be anywhere in the world and connect with something, or relate to something that somebody in recovery has shared online, and say, wow, if that person can do it, if Kelly can do it, if Chris can do it, then I can do it too.
For sure.
It's really quite an amazing thing. And I love social media for that reason, and the relationships that I've cultivated with people just through a silly app like Instagram. I mean, it's been amazing. And I can open my phone and know that I have people that will support me in any kind of, I have this in real life as well, but I know that if I'm alone at home, I can reach out to somebody that I've met on the internet as well, and say, hey man, I'm kind of going through something today. Have you ever been through this? And chances are they say, yeah, something similar. Let me help you. This is what I did.
Yeah,
cool. And it's just such a great, when it's used for the right thing, it is such an amazing tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm getting to meet people from I'm loving talking to my friends from Nigeria and from Ghana, and it's just so cool that they'll reach out and then we'll have a you know what I mean? It's just a whole new world has opened up for people like us who are trying to get a message out there.
Yeah.
Really neat thing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here, talking to you right now if it weren't for the internet. So this is amazing.
Very grateful.
Yeah, definitely. What message do you get? Because I'm sure you get a lot of messages from family members or partners of the addict or alcoholic saying, my son, my daughter, my boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever it may be, has a problem, but I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, sure. And that's of course it's a tough one. I'll always ask them, are they looking to get help? And sometimes they're like, well, yeah, they've tried this, this, and this. And then, then we can have the conversation about, hey, maybe it's time you haven't tried this. Do you have this service in your area? Haven't tried a 12-step meeting? Okay. What about Smart Recovery? What about just getting into a detox, if that's viable, and being separated from the drugs or alcohol for a good week just to get the environment changed, that way. And, there's always something that we can do. And it's always have them get in touch with me. Let me talk to the person directly. Here's my phone number. I have no problem doing that.
Sure.
So there's that, but then there's also the answer of, well, no, they don't want help.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, listen, I know I've been there. And I said, the only thing I say that your job is to not turn your back on them as much as you possibly can. Don't turn your back on them. Please don't enable them by showering them with money or rewarding them for terrible behavior. But at the very least, just let them know that you haven't turned your back on them. And when they're ready for help, that you're someone that they'll be able to come to and just, start wanting to get help. Because I think a lot of people, once they think that, okay, they've given up on me, they won't talk to me anymore. And then I think that's a huge reason for people to say, you know what, fuck it, I'll just stay out here and die.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's a similar message that I'll always give back to a family member as well, is that, the main piece there is the not to enable them, because, if you keep giving them a warm bed to sleep in and a hot meal, and, money when they run out, or a ride home, or whatever it is that, bail out of jail, whatever it is that, you're sending the message that what you're doing is acceptable to me, and I'm always going to take care of you. But something that I think is really important for family members to position themselves in a way where they say, I love you, I want to support you, but I have to create a boundary for my safety and also for yours. I'm going to be over here on the sidelines waiting for when you're ready, and whenever you're ready, come to me. Know that I'm loving you from a distance right now. I'm not turning my back on you, but I can't be a part. I can't co-sign this life that you're living any longer. And when you're ready to change, I'm here 100% for you.
Amazing.
And yeah, I thought I would ask you that because it's a question that I get quite often, and oftentimes it's the actual person who they want to find recovery doesn't even realize that the partner is having this phone call or this text message or this DM, and they haven't expressed any interest in recovery. It's just, and I think that is probably the most desperate and hardest place for anyone to live, as a family member wanting the addict or alcoholic to get help and them not having the willingness. And I wanted to ask you on the air because it's something that I think a lot of people don't know how to properly support an addict and also create that healthy boundary. And something that we've implemented in with Lakeside Recovery is this like transitional care that we do. So as the family member is in treatment with us, inpatient, we also offer a meeting for a family member. Like, so we set up therapy for one family member to be a part of, and those therapists talk. So the client's therapist and the family member's therapist talk to each other, and then we all have the conversation. So we're all part of this person's recovery, and we can identify, like, where are the holes in the treatment, where do we need to focus. And that has been such a useful and productive tool, is just to have two people in basically in therapy or in treatment, a family member and the addict, because as this is like it's a family disease. We don't, as addicts, we don't realize the reach of our destruction and chaos that we're creating until we get sober and have some humility to be able to take a look and get honest with ourselves about, like, wow, when I used to say I'm only hurting myself, why does anybody give a shit? Well, the wake of my destruction has reached far further than I ever had realized.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's funny you mentioned that. So I had a good friend of mine. He had a 1-year anniversary, sobriety anniversary celebration on Sunday. And he had about 30 guests there for him, just for himself. And my friend said to me, he said, this is interesting. These 30 people, it's amazing the amount of lives that we affect, either in a negative way, and then we can do the same in a good way afterwards. Right. But it in recovery, just like kind of based on what you were saying, like, we do leave a wave of destruction. These 30 people were there to support him before they were being negatively affected. So it's crazy, man. So it's so important to talk to the family. I love that you guys do that over at Lakeside. I think that is so amazing.
Yeah, it's something we're really proud of, and we've seen some great benefits from that.
Definitely.
But anyways, I'm just looking at the time. It's been about an hour and 40, so maybe we'll wrap it up, Kelly. But I just want to first of all, I want to thank you for for everything that you're doing out there in the world of recovery, for our friendship and our working relationship, as well, for spending the time with me today and helping to spread a message of hope and sharing your story to anybody listening or viewing. And if anybody wants to check out any of your social media platforms or the Life Beyond Sobriety community, where can they find you?
You can find me at lifebeyondsobriety.com. That's my personal website. And that will land you on the page that can direct you to my social media, or that can direct you to the actual Life Beyond Sobriety community to check it out for 2 weeks for free. And I'd love to see it. Yeah. And if you find me on Instagram through my website, you definitely send me a DM, and I will 100% get back to you.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I'm thrilled to have spent the time with you, and I'm just so much looking forward to our future working together and helping to change some lives out there.
Oh, me too, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.